Hi, I'm Greg Howlett, and I want to take a few minutes and talk to you about my favorite course at greghowlett.com, Reharmonization. Reharmonization is a passion of mine, and this is a 4-hour, very intense course that many of you are going to have to watch a few times to understand. That shouldn't bother you. These are concepts that I've worked on my entire life. And reharmonization is a huge part of how I get the sound in my music that I get. So it's very, very important to me. Now, reharmonization refers to changing harmony within a song. There's 3 aspects to that I cover in this course. Number 1, we talk about how to change boring chords into more interesting chords. If we start with the C chord, let's say a C basic triad, C major triad, we will add additional notes to make it more interesting. We might add a major 7th and a sharp 11, for example. You have a much more colorful, interesting sound. We actually take the first 2 hours of the course to cover that in detail. Not just the C major chord, of course, but all the chords. And how do you change boring chords into more interesting chords? That's very, very important. From there, we move on to a second aspect of reharmonization, which is chord substitutions. How do you change one chord for another? For example, you might change an A chord or some derivative of an A chord for a C chord. That would be a substitution. And then we move on and talk about a third, more advanced form of reharmonization in which we completely shelve, throw away, the harmony of a song and replace it with hopefully better harmony. And that's a very, very advanced topic that we cover in the last hour or so of the course. Now, I want to show you a few clips from the course, and we're going to start with a clip where I'm demonstrating that first strategy, changing boring chords into more interesting chords, and I'm working with the song Abide With Me. Listen. On a dominant chord, by the way, I think I forgot something. I told you that. I told you that in a dominant chord, you could use any color note, but here are the color notes you're most often going to use. Flat 9, 9, flat 13, and 13, okay? That sound right there, you have a flat 9. Okay, let's keep going. I'm just going to sort of play, and I'll stop when I play something interesting. Okay, there's a 4 chord. I've added the 13 to it, and I've got, let's see. Okay, look at that chord. It's an A flat chord, A flat C. There's no 5 in that chord. I've left it out, but I put the 13 here. And I've got the 7 right here. Okay, F, that's an F minor chord. I don't really hear much I like in terms of color notes. Maybe that, I have an 11th in there, there's an 11th. That's a really, really pretty sound. And that is, let's see what that is. That's a B flat chord. It's got a 9 in it. It's a 5 chord with a 9. There's a 9 again. There's a 9 again right there. By the way, when I see that 5 chord, I can change it to a 4/5 if you want. Make it a suspended dominant. And then I play a flat 9 and a 13. Again, that same open sound, there's a 9. There's a 9. Nine right there. You can play 9 or flat 9. There's a flat 9. 9. Okay, that's got a 13 in it as well as a, let's try the 9. There's a flat 9. There's your 5, 7 again. I'm going to try a 9, flat 9. Here's a 9, here's a flat 9. Okay, I'm going to to play it through one more time just for fun because I like playing it. But I want to point out that what I am doing, I'm not changing the harmony. The sounds that you're hearing all come from those color notes. And I know I'm going through it quickly, but this is just a process. It's just a process of learning. You keep doing it, you stick with it, and eventually you'll start hearing those color notes. Okay, so here. Okay, even on the end, you saw I added the 9 to that chord. Now that's all there is to it. That's such a wrong thing to say. I know that's hard, guys. I've done this for a long time. You just got to get there and keep doing it. All right, hopefully that gave you an idea of how to use color tones in a song. And if that was over your head, don't worry. I talk about that at length before we get to that example in the course. Let's move on to the other aspects of reharmonization. For example, chord substitutions. Now, there's several different approaches to chord substitutions that we cover. First of all, we talk about functional equivalence. In other words, if one chord functions like another chord, it's probably interchangeable with that other chord. It's a good candidate for a chord substitution. We talk about common tones. Now, common tones is the way that most of the time chord substitutions are taught, and by the way, it's one of the weakest ways that you can do chord substitutions, but it still works, so we talk about it. And that means if a tone is shared by 2 different chords, and that tone happens to be the melody note, there's a possibility for a substitution. But then we introduce something that's very, very important and very powerful. I call it universal rule of chord substitutions. And that is this: any chord can substitute for any chord if 2 conditions are met. Number 1, the chord has to work with the melody note. Number 2, that chord has to work with the chords around it. Now, that's a big, big idea, but it's very, very important. We talk about that at length, and we talk about it in the context of another idea, which is called functional harmony. Now, functional harmony refers to the way that chords interact with each other. And if you combine all these concepts, you can come up with some very, very powerful things in terms of new harmony for hymns. And I want to demonstrate that in this next clip. This is a long clip, but watch it all the way through and you'll see a good example of how I demonstrate and how I use that kind of reharmonization. This is with the hymn, My Jesus, I Love Thee. We're actually going to work through an example of using this concept with My Jesus, I Love Thee, a great simple song. And we're going to sort of walk through and do some chord substitutions in this song. I'm going to take my time here. And by the time you're done, I think you're going to understand a little more of what we're doing in terms of what we just went through, functional equivalence, functional harmony, and you're going to start to see how this will work. Now, I've picked a very, very simple song. This happens to be one of my favorite songs in the world. And I'm going to jot some notes here to help. Now, we've got very, very typical traditional harmony. If you look at it the way it is now, we got in the key of F 1 4 1 5 1 4 1 5 1 4 1 4 1 5 1 4 1 5 1 4 1 4 1 5 1. So you have a song that consists entirely of 1, 4, and 5 chords, and it's a gorgeous song. You can play it using 1, 4, and 5 chords, and it'll sound good. It's a great song. However, we can make it much, much, much better. And I want to take you through the process to do that. Now, we're going to do some chord substitutions here, and we're not going to worry so much about anything we've talked about in terms of common tones. We're not going to worry about common tones. We're not going to worry about the functional equivalence. We're going to step outside of that and do some other things from the perspective of the universal formula, finding chords that work with the melody note and finding chords that work with the chords around them. Okay? So let's start the song. First of all, we won't mess with the first chord. We rarely do. Okay? Now, we'll leave that on a 1 chord, but when we move to this 2nd chord, what I would do here is I would use a G minor 7. That's just something that I traditionally would do. I'm not really sure, but I like the fact that it's stepping. I'm stepping from F up a step to G minor. Remember I said chords like to move in steps. So this is how it would sound. Okay, so I like that sound. It's a very open G minor 7 there. You could play it in other ways too. You could play that. Still G minor 7. I'm just going to write it in here. Okay, now some of you are thinking, well, isn't G minor 7 the 2 chord? Aren't you substituting a 2 for a 4? Yes, we are. That's, it works on a couple of different levels. It works because we're moving in steps from F to G, but it also works because, like we said earlier, a 2 chord substitutes for a 4 anyway, based on the principle of common tones. So B flat is your 4 chord, we just substituted a 2. Now, that's all going to break down here though, because I'm going to play A7 here, okay? A7, a dominant chord on here at the start of bar 3. Why did I pick A7? Well, it's just going to sound good. At least it's going to sound good to me. It's not a substitution that we have talked about at all. We never said that the 1 chord, you could substitute a major 6-7 chord for a 1 chord, or a major 3-7 chord for a 1 chord. Never said that, but it works because, again, we're stepping. You see that? We're stepping from G to A. So we've created a 1, 2, 3 progression here. Here's how it sounds. Okay, I like that sound. It's a really, really cool sound. I added the flat 9 to it. You don't have to. There's natural 9. There's no 9 at all. But I like that sound right here. Okay, now that has to move somewhere. Okay, now we have an F chord on the whole bar, but let's not worry too much about it. Let's talk about where the A7 likes to resolve. Where does A7 resolve? Down a half step or down a fifth. What we're going to do is we're going to put a D minor here. Okay, we're going to put it right here on beat 3. Because A7 resolves down to D. We could put it right here, I suppose. As a matter of fact, we'll try both places. Okay, there's D minor on beat 3. It sounds really good. Again, it works because you got an F and a D minor chord. It works fine in the D minor chord. A7 resolves naturally to D minor. Okay? Now let's do it where, let's change it to where the D minor is here. Okay? Substituting D minor for C7, just to see how it sounds. Okay, not going to work, is it? There's some reasons why. First of all, hanging out on the A7 for that long just doesn't work. And then there's some other reasons too that are sort of complex to get into. But what we have here works. We're substituting D minor. Technically, this is a whole bar of an F chord, so we're substituting D minor for F, which some of you recognize is a 6-for-1 substitution. We talked about that early on. It's a common tone substitution. So now we got F, G7, G minor 7, A7, D minor 7. What are we going to do here? Now, could we resolve D minor to C7? D minor is your 6th chord in the key of F. We said that minor 7th chords like to resolve either down a fifth or in diatonic steps. Now, D minor 7 to C7 is a diatonic step. D, that's the 6th chord moving to the 5th chord. So you can do that without incident. Let's do it. Let's hear how it sounds. You can do that. However, I want to do something better. Here's what I want to do. I want to change, for that C7, I want to put G7 again. Okay, now why did I do that? Well, D minor 7 moves down a fifth to G minor 7. So you're moving around the circle fifths, moving by fifths. And what it's going to allow me to do is put a C7 here. Okay? So I'm going to play G7 here and then G minor 7 and then switch to C7. So instead of playing a whole bar of C7, I'm going to substitute G minor 7 for the first 2 beats of that bar. So now we have a progression that's F, G minor 7, A7, D minor 7, G minor 7, C7, and F. Make sure you understand where I came up with that. It's all functional, okay? We went from F, G minor 7, that's a step, which is the way chords like to move. G minor 7 to A7 is another step. A7 to D7 is down a fifth, D minor 7. D to G down a fifth, G to C is a fifth. And then C to F is a fifth. Here's how it sounds. Sounds really, really good, really good. Much better than the original harmony. So we've substituted a 1-4-1, 5-1 progression, which is honestly very, very boring, to 1-2, major 3-7, 2, major 3-7, 6, 2, 5, 1. So we substituted a string of chords for one chord. We're going to cover this in a lot more detail, I promise you, but I just want to sort of break you in to this idea, concept. Let's keep going, okay? So that is your first phrase, okay? Now we're going to play with the second phrase, and we're not going to do it the same way. We're going to use what we just learned about functional harmony, and I want to introduce in this next phrase one of those more interesting chords. We can do either maybe a diminished chord in here. As a matter of fact, I'll show you something really quick. You could insert the sharp 1 diminished right here, couldn't you? Between the 1 and the 2 chord. Remember we said a sharp 1 diminished fits very nicely between a 1 and a 2. Here's how it sounds. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking in the key of C. Let me do it again. I did 1, sharp 1 diminished, 2, sharp 2 diminished, 3. Moving up by half step. Again, here it is. 1, sharp 1 diminished, 2, sharp diminished, 3. So you could do that. You could add those diminished chords in there if you want. It's your call. I left them out of this, at least initially, but you can go back and add them later, anytime. Just depends on how much harmonic activity you want going on. People have different ideas about that. Sometimes we simplify. Sometimes we take four chords and reduce it to 2. Other times we might take 2 chords and turn it into 4 chords. There, we're turning a bar. If we did what I just did, we turned this bar, which had 2 chords in it, into 4 chords. And that would be typical, and it's cool to do that, especially if the chords are good. In other cases, maybe not. All right, we're through the first bar, or the first phrase, and we're ready to start the second phrase over here in bar 6, okay? Now, here's what I want to do here. I want to use the minor 4-6. I love that chord. I just love it. So we're going to use it here and try to use it in this progression. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to use that sound right there. That is a minor 4-6. Now, how do I know that I can use a minor 4-6 there? Well, there's 2 reasons why. Number one, it works with an F. You can go from 1 to minor 4-6 all you want. You can go from 1 to anything. So we're not worried about the chord in front of it. We do need to worry about the chord that's coming next. Look at the chord that comes next. F. In bar 7, we're moving. We know we're going back to F, which is the 1 chord. The 4-6 resolves to the 1 chord. Therefore, we know we can insert a minor 4-6 there without any problem. And it's a much prettier sound than just a straight 4 chord. Now, the other reason we know it'll work is because B flat is in a B flat minor 6 chord. Obviously, it's the root of the chord. So we can get away with playing that sound, which is just absolutely gorgeous. See it? It's a B flat, D flat, F, and then you have a G. Now, here's something else we can do. Where does that resolve to? It can resolve to the 1 chord, but we said that a 3 chord is identical to a 1. So we can resolve it to A minor. All right, so don't worry if you didn't understand all that. It's a little advanced. Remember, there's 4 hours of instruction before we get to that point. And if you have to watch the course a couple of times to get it, don't worry about that as well. Again, these are things that I've worked on for the past 20 years. Most of the time I've been a pianist. I've been working through these concepts. They take time, but they really, really will elevate your music to a whole new level. So consider this course if you like harmony.